Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Apex Town Council. This is the October 16th, 2018 meeting. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Pastor Matt Curry. He is one of the pastors at Apex Baptist Church, and he's come for our invocation tonight.
Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this day. God, thank you for the opportunity to gather in this great town of Apex and to do business and to make sure that we continue to move forward in the direction, God, that would be best for everyone involved. And so, Lord, we acknowledge tonight that you are the creator of all things, including wisdom. And so, Lord, we just ask for that. We ask that you would bring wisdom, clarity, and guidance to all of these men and women who have made the choice to serve the public and to do that with integrity and honesty. And Lord, I just pray that you would be in the middle of this meeting. We ask, God, that you would continue to bless our great nation. Lord, we know that there are a lot of things going on that can divide, but Lord, I pray that we would recognize that there is a lot that can unite. And so, God, I pray we would focus on that as a nation, and that, Lord, it starts in smaller pockets like this one in Apex. So, Lord, be with us. I pray that you would guide and direct. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's good to see everyone here tonight. I want to remind you a couple of things. One is, if this is your first time here, welcome to Apex Town Council. There is a stapled agenda. You can tell what's on my mind. I missed dinner. Yeah. This is an agenda or menu if you're into council meetings for dinner. They are out on the podium. If you missed one, feel free to jump up and go get one. There's no stigma attached to going out and get yourself a piece of paper. The other is the yellow sheet of speaker guidelines. So if you intend to speak tonight, you need to be familiar with these guidelines before you speak. In addition, there are yellow sheets here on the ledge. In order to speak at one of the items, your name needs to be on that sheet. So feel free to jump up and go over there, because in about 5 minutes the town clerk will collect them and hand them to me. With those two things taken care of, we'll now move into our presentations. So at this time, presentation number one, I'd like to recognize Jeff McCauley, the CFO of Greenville Utilities Commission, to present an award.
Thank you, Mayor Olive. Good afternoon, Town Council, Town Administration, and citizens of the Town of Apex. As Mayor Olive indicated, my name is Jeff McCauley, and I currently serve on the board of the North Carolina Government Finance Officers Association. And I'm honored to be here this evening in Apex, which is known as the peak of good living and also one of the best places to live in America. And now tonight it's going to be known as the peak of good accounting as well, because I'm here on behalf of the Government Finance Officers Association to present the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting to the Town of Apex. The purpose of the Certificate of Achievement program is to encourage and assist governments in preparing financial reports of the highest quality for the benefits of its citizens and other parties with a vital interest in the government's finances. During the more than 70 years the program has operated, it has gained widespread recognition as a premier indicator for excellence in governmental accounting and financial reporting. To earn the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, the Town of Apex had to substantially conform to the program's demanding criteria, which go well beyond the generally accepted accounting principles, and also have its financial report reviewed by 3 independent reviewers. This is not the first time the Town of Apex has received this recognition. Rather, tonight's presentation marks the 24th, that's right, the 24th consecutive year the Town of Apex has received this award. Such accomplishment reflects the professionalism and commitment of the town manager, Drew Havens, the Assistant Town Manager, Sean Purvis, the Finance Director, Vance Holloman, the Accounting and Budget Manager, Suzanne Parmenter, the Finance Department staff, and numerous other individuals, as well as many hours of hard work. It also represents the dedication and leadership on behalf of Apex's Town Council. There are approximately 90,000 governmental units in the United States, and only 5% achieve this pinnacle in financial reporting. Therefore, the Government Finance Officers Association hopes that this award presented to the town of Apex will serve as an example and encourage others to strive for these same high standards. Therefore, at this time, it is my privilege, on behalf of the Government Finance Officers Association, to present the town of Apex's Finance Director and Accounting Manager this Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. Congratulations on the job well done.
Mayor, if I could maybe just...
Yes, please do. Come over to the microphone so everyone can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. I would like to begin by thanking Jeff for coming from Greenville to be with us this evening, a long trip, and Jeff does this at a lot of government, so I know he devotes a lot of time to that, and I really do appreciate him coming so far this evening. And as he said, this just would not be possible to get this report out if it were not for the support of the council and our managers, their support of these efforts for transparency in government and disclosures, full disclosures to our citizens. This would just not be, I wish Suzanne stayed up here, but this would not be possible without Suzanne and all the work she's done. I've been here for just a few of these, and Suzanne has been here for dozens of them, so she does a great job, she and her staff, throughout the year, as well as in preparation of the report. And really, there's information in here that comes from all the departments of the town, so it's really it's a town-wide effort, not just simply the finance department. But again, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Vance. We'll have to get him some more wall space for these. That's 24. That's pretty impressive.
The dynasty.
Yes, it is. At this time, before we get into consent agenda, I just want to state for the public record, Councilman Moyer obviously wishes he could be here, but as he said, his daughter is entering a tournament, and tonight's the first game of the tournament, and he's already missed a couple because they keep scheduling them on the council meeting night, so he chose wisely, I think, to take this opportunity to support his daughter, so he's out. We do have a quorum of 4, just for the record. We now move into consent agenda. We have a few consent items, not nearly as many as we've seen in meetings past, but consent agenda items, for those of you who don't know, are typically considered to be non-controversial, and we typically enact them with a single motion and vote. If any council member wishes to pull one for discussion a little bit later, they certainly can do so. With that said, I'll call for the council to either discuss an item or let's have a motion for approval.
Mayor, just to bring to the council's attention, subbed out consent 4 to correct the date.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you, let's see, that's on our desk here. Yes, okay, number 4. And the date correction is in red?
Yes.
All right. So, council, do you have a question about that? There's a sheet on the table? Okay. With the date correction. All right, thank you for that. Is there a motion?
Motion approved with the correction?
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes. Consent agenda has passed. We now set the agenda for tonight. I know of no changes specifically. Public hearings 1 and 2, I think we'll talk about from a continuance perspective, but I think we'll leave them on here since they're up at the front, and we'll get to them very shortly. That also said, talked to the town attorney about possibly sharing some information with us. So with everyone's okay, I'd like to ask that we also include a closed session at the end for consulting with the town attorney so she can share some information confidential. All right. But other than that, I know of nothing else. Any feedback, or is there a motion to set the agenda? All right, we have a motion to set the agenda. All right, a motion and a second to set the agenda with the one closed meeting item. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, the agenda is set. We now move to public hearings. Public hearings number 1 and 2. Let me just ask Lauren, since this is assigned to you.
Forum.
Oh, public forum, I'm sorry, I jumped right over it. Let me do that. We'll do public forum. I apologize. All right. So, public forum is a time for the council to listen. You come talk to us. There's a 3-minute time limit, and we have a green, yellow, red light system up here. I have 2 people who have signed up, and so let me call them up. And it looks like Tracy and John Taylor, so I guess you'll either come up together or... Oh, well, Stan Jackson instead?
Yes, that's right. And this is for the Tullamore PUD,
Is that not on our public hearings tonight?
it's a public hearing,
Yeah.
05.
All right, then what we'll do, if, we'll put that on public hearing number 5 then, since that's the appropriate location for comment. And I see, Stan, you have signed up for public hearing number 5? All right. So with that, Tracy and John Taylor, you don't have anything to share in public forum?
Yeah, so there's on the second line, sorry, it's clear to me.
Is that also-
Shameless shop, so that would be awesome too.
Also public hearing 5?
Yes,
All right.
sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'm good. And Shalish? All right, we'll address that when we get to public hearing 5. With that, I don't see anyone else for public forum, so I will open the public forum and then formally close it, since there's no one left to speak during public forum. Those items that we just discussed, Tullamore, will be heard at public hearing number 5 shortly. With that said, we now move to public hearings. Thank you for keeping me on track, folks. Public hearings number 1 and 2. Before we get too far into introductions, Lauren, is there an update on continuance or something similar?
Just that the applicant has requested to continue both items.
Okay, so the applicant has requested to continue both items until what date?
November 20th.
November 20th. All right, and just because I haven't looked that far, did you already check? That's a council meeting
Yes, sir.
night? Okay, just we'll make sure we get it right. I don't want to come up here on a Wednesday or something. Well, I don't mind if we got work to do, but it'd be nice to slot it in. With that said, is the requester here? So you can confirm, sir? All right, thank you. I'd hate to do it without your knowledge. With that said, I'll ask council if there is a motion to continue this item until November 20th at the 7 p.m. meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
That's
Discussion?
public hearing 01 and 02.
Yes, public hearings 1 and 2, thank you. Discussion? All right, not hearing any, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that is continued. And that will be heard November 20th. That takes us to public hearing number 3 and 4. These are joined together as well because they are annexation and rezoning. And Lauren Stoudemire is presenting. Ms. Stoudemire.
Good evening. This is annexation case number 639 and rezoning case 18RZ26 for Olive Farm Park, located on Olive Farm Road. The property to look at is in this general area. The property to be annexed and rezoned is located on the south side of Hume Olive Road and to the west of Olive Farm Road. The property to be annexed is located outside the ETJ and the Apex corporate limits. The property the property currently zoned is Wake County Residential 40W, and the adjacent zonings are to the north, east, south, and west residential 40W as well. The applicant is proposing to rezone this property to conservation buffer. The 2030 land use map identifies the proposed site as medium-density residential. The proposed straight rezoning to conservation buffer is generally consistent with the land use map designation. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on July 25th, 2018, and a copy of the neighborhood packet is in your report. The proposed rezoning is reasonable because the proposed conservation buffer zoning district is generally consistent with the medium-density residential designations on the 2030 land use map and is standard district for all Town of Apex parks, and park as a land use is allowed in all zoning districts. This will help expand the town's park system and provide recreational uses to the residential development in the general area. Planning staff can recommend approval of this rezoning.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Lauren before we go to public hearing? All right.
If we develop this park and then need road improvements, that'll happen at the kind of the park design phase? Okay.
All right, thank you. And this time I'll open the public hearing, and I see I have one signed up, Holly Zhang. And just before we start, please state your name and address and keep your eye on the green, yellow, red lights.
Okay, I'm Holly Zane, and my address is 4818 Home Place Drive.
Okay.
Okay. Dear Mayor and members of City Council, I am Holly Zane, and I am a member of Triangle People Power, a youth activist organization fighting for the ACLU's grassroots agenda. We are based on the national nonprofit People Power. Our current initiative is environmental justice, and we're specifically focused on how environmental issues pertain to racial equity and indigenous rights. The environmental justice movement began in Warren County, North Carolina, over 35 years ago. Citing the high Black and Hispanic population, the EPA designated the low-income community of Afton to be the dumping ground for an extremely hazardous chemical, PCB.
Ms. Zhang, let me pause you for just 1 second. I apologize, and I don't mean to take away from your time, but is this relevant to the park that we're looking at rezoning?
Oh, no. I think I was supposed to sign up for the public
Here in public forum?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. If no one minds, I'll just go ahead and allow her to finish, but we'll just recognize the context is not relevant or related to the park itself. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
That's great.
All right. I apologize, but please go ahead and continue.
Sorry. Okay.
Don't apologize.
The residents protested by lying on the ground to physically prevent the trucks from distributing this substance into their communities. These were people who risked everything they had, their lives, freedom, families, to protest for their own rights and human dignity. Right now, America, North Carolina, and Apex is facing an environmental crisis. Climate change, rising sea levels, storms, natural disasters, all of which disproportionately affect people of color, those who have contributed to climate change the least. Which is why we are proposing two bills passed by the New York City Council, Intro 886A and Intro 359A. You can amend this legislation based on our city's departments and standards. According to NYC.gov, in an article written on April 25th, 2017, Intro 886 sets up an interagency working group to create a citywide environmental justice plan that provides guidance on incorporating environmental justice concerns into city decision-making, identifies possible citywide initiatives for promoting environmental justice, and provides specific recommendations for city agencies to bring their operations, programs, and projects in line with environmental justice concerns. Intro 359A requires the new interagency working group to conduct a study to identify and address environmental justice concerns and to make recommendations for measures to advance environmental justice goals. Additionally, we are presenting a petition for a 100% renewable energy plan and carbon-free economy. This initiative has been sponsored by the Action Network and has countless signatures. We're asking you to pass this environmental justice legislation because it is common sense. It not only protects the environment, it affords lower-income communities of color human rights and dignity.
All right, thank you, Ms. Zhang. And if you don't mind, before you leave, could you come up here and also add your town and state? to, this item? Oh, thanks, Nicole. Just right here, so we can, yeah, there you go. There you go.
Put your, contact information since it's environmental issue on the
All right, with that being that being the end of the list, I'll close the public hearing and refer the matter back to council for discussion. So just to provide the context, we didn't have anybody speak in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning. So, if there's a motion for approval, seems like it might be appropriate.
Motion approved?
All right, we have a motion for approval.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the motion for approval? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Can we clarify that that's both for the annexation and for
oh,
the
yes,
rezoning?
sure. So let's do that, yes.
These joint ones are tricky.
For the motion, you're,
The
for
annexation
both.
and the rezoning.
Yes, and for the, all right, so all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you for that clarification. That takes care of public hearings 3 and 4. Public hearing number 5, this is a rezoning 18CZ22 Tullamore PUD. Sarah Rayfield is presenting. Ms. Rayfield.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm presenting case 18CZ22 Tullamore PUD, located at 1805, 1745, and 0 Holt Road, located here in this general vicinity of Apex. And then this will be the subject property that I'll be discussing this evening. The site is approximately 13.31 acres. It is currently zoned rural residential and medium-density residential conditional use. The proposed zoning is planned unit development conditional zoning. The 2030 land use map identifies this site as medium-density residential. Bring us here to that. So, and I'm going to go back here real quick and just to, again, orient you further to the site. So we have Holt Road here, Charleston Village located here to the west and south, and then over here further east we have Sutton Place. So the site is generally surrounded by single-family residential. The subject properties contain existing home to be removed at a future point. The other parcels are vacant and wooded. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on May 29th, 2018. That report is attached in your staff report. As I mentioned, the 2030 land use recommendation is medium-density residential. The planned unit development conditional zoning is consistent with that recommendation. You will find in your staff report a full listing of the zoning conditions proposed with this site. I will go over a few of those, but again, all of them are located in your staff report. Permitted uses include single-family residential with a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet, minor utilities, greenway, park, active and passive, recreational facility, private. Maximum residential density for the project is 3.6 units per gross acre. You'll find your setbacks in the table there, and in regard to perimeter buffers, what is proposed is a 20-foot type B buffer along the perimeter here, and a 20-foot type A boundary to the north. This PUD is providing at least 25% of the total area in RCA. You will find a complete listing of the architectural standards in your packet on page 3. I will go over a few of them here. These are the typical architectural standards that we see. Number 12, all homes will have a master bedroom located on the first floor. Number 13, there is a small parcel right here identified, and it would be included in the project boundary when this comes back for master subdivision.
And then I will read in full numbers 14 through 16. And I also did, and I should have prefaced the beginning of this, you will find that you have a paper copy of page 3 in front of you. We received additional zoning conditions yesterday from the applicant, so I have bolded those new conditions that were not previously included in your staff report. So number 14, where economy housing is housing that can be purchased by a household that earns approximately the median household income for Apex, Tullamore PUD will address economy housing by providing at least 5 residential lots that are at least 40 feet wide and are at least 15% smaller than the average lot as measured by lot width. These economy lots may have reduced lot sizes of up to 10% below the minimum lot size and will be designated on the subdivision plans and will not be restricted in sales. Number 15, all homes shall provide conduit for the future installation of rooftop solar panels. There will be at least 4 homes in the project built with 3 kilowatt active solar systems on the roof. The lots on which these homes are located shall be designated on the final plat. And number 16, the developer has also agreed to install sidewalk from the site eastern property line on Holt Road to the intersection of Templeton Gap Road. There is existing sidewalk here, so that will provide sidewalk, will fill essentially that sidewalk gap. So sidewalk will be constructed along the property frontage of Holt Road, and now then will continue here, and as well both sides of all internal streets, as this is a PUD, and that is a requirement of the PUD zoning. The Tullamore PUD will extend existing public facilities. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Commission heard this at their August 29th meeting. Those details are also in your staff report. The proposed PUD is consistent with the Apex Transportation Plan. There will be one proposed point of access here into the site, which has already been evaluated for vertical and horizontal site distance with our traffic engineering department. And again, there will be sidewalks along both sides of all streets internally. Planning staff recommends approval of 18 CZ 22 Tullamore PUD with the conditions as offered by the applicant. The planning board heard this item at their October 8th meeting and unanimously voted to recommend approval of the rezoning with the conditions as offered by the applicant. Approval of the rezoning is reasonable because the planned unit development conditional zoning district is consistent with the medium-density residential land use classification of the 2030 land use map, and the proposed rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest because it will allow single-family residential uses to develop consistent with existing single-family residential development in the area. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
All right, questions from Ms. Rayfield?
I have one. The type B buffer, I noticed it goes through kind of wooded areas as well as where there's a pond right now and some non-wooded areas. So can you remind me, like, how that looks in those different environments, like the trees already there versus trees that are not there yet?
So if additional plantings are needed in order to meet the buffer opacity requirements, then those would need to would be supplemented.
Okay, and the type A buffer. So right now it's B on the every boundary but the northern. So a type A, if you want to build that on a wooded area, like let's say that was type A instead of type B, that would mean the trees have to get cut down first and then replanted with more opaque.
No, the trees wouldn't necessarily have to get cut down. Okay. If it was if they could be used to meet the buffer standards.
Okay. So if trees are existing are not opaque enough, then there'll be trees added to a type A buffer or B?
So if it doesn't, as it exists, meet the buffer standards, then it would need to be supplemented in order to meet those standards.
Okay.
Any others? All right, thank you, Ms. Rayfield. I'll invite the applicant up. As is typical, the applicant can use up to 9 minutes to introduce their project, and then we will be able to ask questions of the applicant, and then we'll go into public hearing. Please introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Stuart Jones, Jones & Knosson Engineering. I'm here tonight on behalf of JS Development and the existing property owners. I just want to say thanks to Sarah for the presentation. I'll try and just hit on a few things. The property is surrounded by existing single-family neighborhoods, and we are proposing only single-family homes. This will be an age-targeted neighborhood, and we are providing the condition that all homes will have a downstairs master. We're providing a list of conditions to ensure the architectural character of the neighborhood. The overall density is limited to 3.6 units per acre. A large portion of the lower parcel will be RCA with landscape and stream buffers in the area. We have increased the buffer width and/or density along the frontage and around the perimeter. We've surveyed and documented our one access point onto Holt Road, which will require increased site distance areas. We're providing an economy housing condition, and the theory behind this is to adjust the price point of the economy lots by reducing the width and overall size of the lot. We're providing the condition on solar pre-wiring, and 4 lots will have active solar systems. The developer is committed to an off-site sidewalk construction to link the neighborhoods, as Sarah pointed out. I did want to mention that at the planning board meeting, we heard some discussion about the sale of the Charleston Village HOA property, which is the lower parcel on in this PUD. So I'd like to point out that this parcel was not part of the original Charleston Village subdivision. It was purchased by the HOA years after the adjacent lots were recorded. The HOA followed procedure to sell the property and duly signed the agent authorization form to present the property for rezoning tonight. This parcel is up for rezoning, and if there is a debate about the process for the sale of real property, then it is our opinion that this issue is a private legal issue and not a zoning issue. President of the Charleston Village HOA is here tonight if you have any questions on this matter. Just as kind of a wrap-up, we are consistent with the surrounding single-family uses. We are consistent with the 2030 land use map. Planning staff is recommending approval, and the planning board unanimously recommended approval. We would appreciate your support, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, questions for Mr. Jones?
I have a few questions. So in the packet, the neighborhood meeting, there were concerns related to grading and environmental impacts and transportation improvements, and so wanted to see if you were interested in making sure that if this goes, that some of those concerns were addressed.
We did talk about the grading at the neighborhood meeting, and I did point out that that's really a subdivision plan item. I tried to assure them that when we do the subdivision plan, we have to provide a grading plan. And part of our challenge as designers is to capture as much stormwater as we can on site and treat that stormwater. We're not allowed to just dump stormwater on adjacent properties. So that's one thing that'll come up during the subdivision review. And I did tell them there'll be another neighborhood meeting where they'll get a chance to look over that situation.
Okay, so, thank you. And you mentioned about the economy housing. So with the median income for our Apex at around $90,000, so what are you suggesting that, tell me what your price range, I guess, would be for those?
Well, we don't have a builder in line yet, so we're just kind of ballparking numbers, but if generally the lot price or the home price would be around $400,000 in this neighborhood, then that smaller lot that would be, instead of 50 feet wide, might be 42 feet wide, that home might sell for about $350,000.
That's not gonna, that's that's not gonna get you with the median household income. We're talking about 90,000 at the top, roughly multiplying, times 3, so I'm having a little bit of an issue with that. So maybe you can get me some more information on that, because it doesn't sound like it's economy housing to me.
Well, it was an effort to try and get the price, if you just take the regular lots, they're all wind up being in the 400,000 range. If we can reduce 4 or 5 in there, and if we can get them closer to that mid-300 number,
I appreciate that. I'm just saying it doesn't really get you...
By our numbers, that was generally where that median number for Apex comes out, not a median number for Wake County.
I understand that. That's 66,000 for Wake County, but I'm just saying that price doesn't seem consistent with the income.
Okay.
And then with the age targeted, the downstairs masters, are you doing the age restricted for, okay, so just kind of targeting, not restricted.
Age targeted, right.
Thank you.
I had a question about the pond and what would be thereafter. So, you talked about gonna drain it, and then the stream is gonna form where it forms, right?
Correct.
I mean, to me, it's more favorable if the stream is closer to the west. That means that stream buffer would make it harder to build a building that backs up to those homes. I mean, is there flexibility in where that stream goes, or if it's like a flat area, the stream could have several different routes theoretically, but if it's a channel, it wouldn't matter. But do you know anything about that as far as like what the future may hold with that?
So when we do the pond draining permit, we have to get a permit from the town, and then you breach the dam at the lowest point. And the lowest point is according to the downstream, what you can find on the downstream part of the dam. And then you basically breach the dam, you put erosion control measures in the breach, and then basically you just leave it. And it has to go through a complete growing cycle, so 6 to 9 months you'd have to leave it. And then if a channel forms, then that channel is now has the stream buffer on it. Okay. We don't really have any control over where that goes. So generally, I'd say, the low point is usually somewhere around the middle of the dam. But that channel could go up here, it could hug this side, it could hug this side. Generally, they meander down through the middle of the pond. A lot of that just depends on what the old topography was before the farmer built the pond.
Okay. And do you have an estimate or preferably a hard number on the amount of the HOA land that will be RCA at this point?
Don't have a hard number because this has not been determined yet. It looks to me, just based on, visual, that almost all of the HOA parcel will be RCA. Sarah, can we go back to my plan with the existing conditions?
The aerial you want there,
that one right there. So on here, there is a stream that runs right here, and that's a perennial stream right now. And so this buffer right now encompasses all of this area, and there's no way I could get to this little corner right now.
Okay.
Even, best case scenario for the developer would be that the pond is drained and this channel comes up through here, this buffer would move over. It's not going to make this buffer go away.
Okay.
And there's the parcel line. The only thing that, there might be a portion of a lot in that corner that might be on the HOA parcel, but other than that, I don't really see anything.
And if the stream, let's say it's the worst case scenario, where it's maybe right down the middle or whatever, you could build a bridge. I guess the stream has to be open. There's no putting it in pipes or anything, right?
You can get a permit to cross it, but you'd have to. I mean, it's expensive. It's costly. The only reason to cross it would be with a public road, and there's no point in going across this to get to
one lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would cost a fortune to get to that one lot down there.
Okay.
So, I can't guarantee that all of it, but just rationally looking at it, it looks like all of it's gonna wind up being a RCA.
You done?
Yeah.
Sorry. You can't put a retention pond in a stream bed. Where do you intend to put the retention pond, or is there going to be one?
We'll have to have one somewhere.
I think so.
They always go in the low spot of the
Yeah.
site.
So it'd be down to the very south?
Yeah, so if this stream comes up through here and this stream buffer moves over, my guess is that the pond would be down in here somewhere.
Okay, you'll bench it, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, I can't put it on the channel.
No, you can't.
And I can't put it over here because the stormwater would, I'd have to get pipes
Get it
to
over
go.
there, yeah.
They'd have to go across the creek
Okay.
and get to it, so.
Any other questions for Stuart?
My question was about the RCA, but Brett covered that.
Okay, all right.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. At this time, I'll open the public hearing, and I see, including, Shailesh, including you, I've got 4. So let me call the names: Alex Corvin, still here? All right, Stan Jackson? All right, Doug, sorry, I can't quite make it out. Jacobs, okay, gotcha. And Shailesh Shah. All right. We'll go. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I didn't know whether to sign up. I was going to defer to Stan, because I'm one of the homeowners as well.
That's fine. He can speak for you. All right, Mr. Corvin, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name is Alex Corvin. I live at 2001 Weehawken Place in Charleston Village. I am the president of the HOA, and I'm here tonight to talk about specifically the one portion that is currently our property, our part of our common area that we're under contract to sell for this development. It's roughly 2.93 acres out of the 13 or so that would make up the entire development. And specifically, I'm here to talk about the decision-making process behind how we came to the decision of selling the property and why we think it's the right decision for the neighborhood. The first point I would like to emphasize is that we, the board, did not make the decision in a vacuum. It wasn't something that was an easy decision for us. It's not something that we took lightly. We tried to involve the neighborhood in it as much as we could, and we did that through 2 kind of critical processes. The first one was an approval process just to give us the right to enter into negotiations for sale. We did that through an amendment to our covenants, which required approval from 75% of homeowners. We have 329 homeowners, so that meant roughly 247 signatures of approval. We ended up getting, over the course of a few months, 81% of the neighborhood signed in favor of moving forward with exploring options to sell this. We then entered into a process of negotiations and finally came to an agreement that we felt was the best for the neighborhood, the best we could get. And to approve that, we had a vote of the neighborhood. We had quorum requirements for what we had to get, but we ended up getting roughly half the neighborhood voted in that, either in person or via proxy. And of the 150 or so, half the neighborhood that voted, 100 of them voted in favor. So I think fairly strong support in favor of this. As you know, we've talked about, the land that we're selling currently has 2 ponds. One of them has a dam. We've gotten a number of opinions, including one that we got commissioned through a third-party engineering firm that told us that this dam is not really up to par. It has some liability concerns, it has some maintenance concerns, and that getting it to where we would feel okay about those concerns would require pretty significant expenditures. This comes at a time when the neighborhood is already running short on reserve funds. We have, we think, fairly low HOA dues. We'd like to continue to keep those low. Addressing our existing reserve funding concerns as well as potential maintenance on the pond and dam would, make that impossible to keep those dues low. And heaven forbid, something like a special assessment, which we really don't want to even talk about. So selling the land, we feel helps with that reserve fund issue, helps with, keeping the dues low going forward and whatnot. And then finally, I know I'm running out of time, the last point that I want to make is that there are 11 homeowners that back up to the property that we are selling. I think we count roughly an additional 21 that back up to the rest of the development. We felt that by selling this land, we could enter into negotiations for conditions like buffer space on the development as a whole.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Corbin.
get something better. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
My name is Stan Jackson. I live at 1803 Keokuk Court in Charleston Village. I passed out some documents.
I'm sorry, so that he can get the appropriate time, is he speaking for 4 more people?
Not according to the sheet, no.
Okay.
Are there four homeowners who did not sign up that he is speaking on behalf of that are here tonight?
I'm here. I didn't know the process.
Yeah, you have the process. I'm deferring my time to Stan.
Well, it doesn't quite work that way, but if there are 4 others that you're speaking on behalf of, then you can have the 9 minutes, but that means nobody else speaks. But is that what you want to do,
Yes.
Shailesh?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no objection with anyone, then I'll change your answer here to yes, Mr. Jackson, and let you speak on behalf. I'm sorry, what was your name, sir?
Thomas Hall, H-U-L-L.
Okay. Got you. All right, thank you very much.
Are you going to give them 9?
Yes, ma'am. You may use 9 minutes, speaking on behalf of these folks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. As I said, my name's Stanley Jackson. I live at 1803 Keokuk Court. I was one of the first people that bought a lot in Charleston Village. I bought a lot that backed up to the common area that Charleston Village is talking about selling. It is address 0 Holt Road, and the PIN number is 0733825561. Myself and a lot of my neighbors that have bought lots backing up to this land bought it for a reason, because it's a beautifully wooded lot, a lot of big trees, very peaceful. You're not surrounded by houses. When I bought this property, I paid a $2,500 lot premium, as the others did too. And these lots backed up to this common area were some of the first that sold. I mean, I drove around and noticed as it was going on. I've got a picture. I didn't know how much time I'd have. I took a lot of pictures and I sent some of them in emails. But as you can see, there's a lot of really big, beautiful trees in this lot. And I guess there's some confusion on how much the acreage was actually sold. Originally, it was 3.75 acres. I think now it's 2.9 acres that we're selling. Mr. Jones, Stuart Jones, made a comment that this wasn't part of the original development, and what it actually was. Along with the clubhouse, the swimming pool, this common area was something that the builder used to entice people to buy in this neighborhood. From my understanding, the developer was the president of the homeowners association, and this land still was his until 90% of the neighborhood was filled, and then he turned this land over to the homeowners association. So it was not bought separately by the homeowners association. It was part of the original development. And let me just go to the next slide. A lot of the people that have lots backed up to this are very much opposed to selling this land. We never expected that in the middle of our neighborhood, somehow circumstances would come where this would be, the trees would be cut down and this land would be developed. There was a lot of hard feelings about how this was done. The next thing I want to speak about is the resource conservation area, the RCA. My neighborhood was completed around 1999, and from what I'm told is the regulation to retain 25% of the natural area of a neighborhood was passed after my subdivision was completed. A couple things I'd like to mention was the town of Apex is experiencing tremendous growth. It's at 51,000 people now, and by the year 2030 it's supposed to be 89,000. So as time goes on, much of this land is going to be developed, and I think Apex is doing the right thing by requiring 20 to 25% of a development to be preserved as a wooded area. If this land is sold, we will not have that. And I think, based on the spirit of the law, if new developments should have to have 20 to 25%, existing neighborhoods that have 20 to 25% should be kept that way. Just if it's the right thing for new developments, I think it's the right thing for older developments as well. The economic issue, number one, resale value of the homes. There is a study of the National Association of Realtors that found that 57% of voters surveyed were more likely to purchase a home near a green space, and 50% would be willing to pay an additional 10%. If you take the 20 homes in Charleston Village that back up to this common area and assume each house is an average $250,000, this would work out to be $500,000 loss of value of existing homeowners in the neighborhood. As I said, these homeowners, including myself, fought against this sale, and our voices and opinions we felt were largely ignored. There were potential alternatives to selling this property that were never given consideration or the neighborhood getting a chance to vote for. The other thing is, the $365,000 that we're selling this property for doesn't even match what the loss of value of the homes in the neighborhood. I feel that if this land's developed, and there will be legal ramification against the Charleston Village Homeowners Association to address the loss of value of these homes. I'm going to pull a few quotes from a homeowners meeting that took place on May 1st, 2017. We met with a representative of a construction company, Taylor Morrison. His name was Steve Leach. He explained that original conversation with the homeowners was they were willing to pay $7,500 to drain this pond. 70% of this pond is on 10 acres that they bought the Herndon property. 30% of it is on Charleston Village's land. So Steve Leach proposed to the homeowners to pay $7,500 to drain the pond and obtain an easement to connect to the sewage system on Ironsides Drive, which goes through our common area. A lot of people in our neighborhood thought that was the right decision because we would be able to get rid of the liability of the pond. We would get some money for it. I was told the easement, they would probably get an easement if they applied for it anyway, but we would be able to keep the majority of the wooded land as is. And that option was not even pushed or pursued by the homeowners board of directors. They didn't like that. What they preferred was an option to sell the land for $365,000. As Mr. Corbin said, they did a study maybe about a year ago saying our homeowners reserve fund was inadequately funded. And I think if that's the case, the prior administration, the board of directors, mishandled some finances, didn't charge enough for dues, whatever. This was thought as an easy fix to get the homeowners association reserve fund bumped up significantly. That's why the board of directors pursued this as the only option from the beginning. This is more about the $7,500 offer to drain the pond and get a sewage easement. The homeowners board of directors had a company assess the pond, and the findings were the rehabilitation option, which meant repairing the dam, was $1.2 million, and the cost to breach the pond was $98,000. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but the board of directors wanted to sell the land and never considered any other option. To gain authority to sell the land, they used the following tactics. They sent a copy of the study of the pond with costs and a letter to all homeowners stating, and I'm going to read part of this, of particular importance are the very high costs associated with repairing the dam. our homeowners association reserve fund is not funded at a rate sufficient to cover the required cost to fully repair the dam. A special assessment across all Charleston Village homeowners of multiple thousands of dollars per household would be required to compensate for the cost.
Mr. Jackson, I just want to pause you just for 1 second to remind you you're about to run out of time, so if you have a final point, you need to make it pretty quick.
I thought I had extended time.
9 minutes, sir.
Okay, so my final proposal is that the town council does not rezone this land, but instead it has the developer agree to use the whole area as a resource conservation area. For that, the price would be reduced from $365,000 to $20,000. They would be able to drain the pond, they could attach to the sewer system. The homeowners association would get $20,000 for the reserve fund. They wouldn't have to worry about the lawsuit from the loss of value, and they would not have to charge $3,800 to repair the pond.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson. All right, now we'll call Doug Jacobs. And Mr. Jacobs, while you're coming up, just let me ask you, you circled yes that you're representing 4 or more people who
So
are
I
present.
didn't know how to count that myself, being one of the 4, if it were 4 additional.
Who can we see a show of hands of who you're representing?
The Herndon family?
Okay.
I don't need 9 minutes.
No, that's fine, because it doesn't quite match, but go ahead if you...
Sure.
We'll go with a 3-minute time frame.
Sure.
How's that, sir?
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, if I can read my own writing, we'll get through it.
All right.
Okay, my name is Doug Jacobs. I reside at 1401 West Academy Street. That is in Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina. I am here this evening to speak on behalf of the family which currently owns the majority of the property, being considered a little over 10 acres, and to speak in favor of the rezoning being requested by the applicant. The property is currently owned by the Herndon family, who traced their roots in the Apex community to the turn of the 19th century, and several of whom still call Apex home, including Mama Lou Herndon, who at 96 years old still lives in the home she has occupied since 1960, which is located at the corner of Salem Street and Apex Beakway. With me this evening and attending are Mr. Charles Herndon, Mr. Wayne Herndon, and Mr. Stanley Herndon. The property being considered is the last remaining portion of land which was purchased by their grandfather over 100 years ago and has served the family over the years to make a living and to provide for their welfare. For many years it's meant farming the land, and over time as the area has grown and changed, this has meant from time to time selling off portions of the farm here and there for residential development, including Charleston Village. The family is seeking now, as it always has, to use the property to provide for their welfare. Farming the property is no longer the means of doing so, as in years past, but we submit, in agreement with the town's future land use plan, that the development of residential housing, such as the applicant is requesting, is the highest and best use of the property. Keep in mind, please, council members, that the Herndons are not rich people looking to further enrich themselves. They're not speculators. They're not investors looking for a quick return on investment. They are retired teachers, school administrators, bank employees, and otherwise ordinary citizens who are simply seeking to provide for their family, to support their mother, and to supplement their own retirements as they have all reached retirement age. Given their deep ties and continued presence to the area, the type and quality of development that goes on the property, should the council, of course, approve the rezoning, does matter to them. They believe they have a great partner in the applicant, also a locally based firm, and they believe that the applicant will put in a quality neighborhood which will be a good fit with the existing development and will be a great fit for the overall community of Apex. We are in favor of moving forward with the rezoning, and we appreciate your thoughtful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. All right, and with that, we've reached the end of the list, so I'll close the public hearing. And Sarah, if you don't mind, could you reset the screen back to a map? Thank you. And with that, I'll bring the matter back to council for discussion, or if there is a new follow-up question that we need to ask of staff, now's a good time to do that, or if there's a motion.
I guess I have a question for the applicant.
For the applicant?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can ask that.
Who's that specifically? Do you want to direct it to?
I guess Stewart.
Mr. Jones? Okay, come on up. I want to get him up here so we can hear you.
So, I think that you're right that majority of that parcel, it makes sense, because I actually walked out there myself. It was kind of mosquito-y when I was out there, but, and briary, but, it is kind of the part that would make sense for the RCA and the pond, whatever, facility to have it in that spot. But I'm a bit concerned with the lack of certainty with, especially the part that's the HOA property, and I was wondering, if you guys were willing to do something where it's like, if it's not a RCA adjacent, if the RCA doesn't touch a property that's adjacent to the HOA property, would you guys be willing to make that a type A buffer in those spots? 20-foot type A.
So let me see if I can understand you. So
the HOA property, but that part, yeah.
Around here,
if it's not RCA,
if it's not RCA, we would agree to a type A buffer.
20-foot type A.
What is the designated plan?
B.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would make it feel more wooded, and it may not be even necessary from what you're saying, or very much of it, but, okay.
I'd be really shocked. One reason I hesitate on the RCA and guaranteeing that it all be RCA is that if we do put part of a pond down in here, there are new restrictions on what we can call RCA for a stormwater pond.
Uh-huh.
I can no longer use the dam and the downslope of a dam as RCA. So I might have part of that dam and the downslope in the HOA parcel. It would still be, grassed. It just, I can't count it as RCA.
Okay. Well, if that part is a type A buffer, I think I'd have less heartache, and you would lose the woods, but it'd feel more woodsy at least with a type
Right.
A. Okay, thanks.
All right, and I appreciate the willingness to consider that. I'm checking with Sarah to see if you're getting the words down. Do you need any clarification on phrasing for that?
I think we understand the intent of it.
Okay.
Would we need to...
I guess on the current HOA property, any adjacent property, on the HOA property, if it's not RCA, you convert the 20-foot type B to 20-foot type A.
And that being a condition for rezoning?
The condition of rezoning.
Yes, I understand it. I might go
Okay.
confer to write it out to make sure.
Is it the entirety of it RCA,
No,
or just any portion that's RCA?
Any portion that's not RCA.
If it's not RCA, then make it type A so that it...
Any portion of the buffer that's not... No, that wouldn't work, because it's already RCA. The buffer's automatically RCA.
Any portion of the buffer not touched.
So you're saying that beyond the required buffer width, if there's additional RCA, which means they would only need to do another 10-foot strip of RCA to not have to make it a type A. And that's what the effect would be.
Oh, I wasn't asking necessarily for the width to be different. It was the opacity that I was concerned with.
I'm not talking about buffer, I'm talking about if you have a 20-foot buffer that's type A, and you want to add RCA to it, you only need to add 10 feet. It counts as RCA because it's adjacent to the
Any
buffer.
portion of this doesn't get
I don't think that's the
developed
question.
and counted.
Yeah, the hard part is that 20-foot type B buffer is already going to be used as RCA.
I guess we can call it any portion of the HOA property.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Not saying this right.
So a clarification I heard from this side of the room was that buffer is RCA by definition. So
I guess I'm interested in
the condition you're...
more opaque buffer that would be...
To,
if a buffer's not touching additional RCA, and...
You can just ask for a buffer along that.
Yeah, I think you should just ask for a buffer. I think that's much cleaner.
Okay, if we ask for a buffer and it's a pond, they don't need to have it as an A buffer necessarily.
I think so.
Okay. A buffer instead of B buffer along the HOA property, I guess is the...
All right, so one sticking point on that is if we're not down in there doing anything, if we make it, type B, it probably already meets type B buffer. If we make it a type A, that means now I gotta bring people down there and plant additional plants and disturb it. Whereas if we left it type B and I'm not doing anything down there, we would just leave it.
If I could...
Just wanna make sure that's your
try to bridge
intent.
this a little bit, what if the buffer width is less than a certain distance, then it's type A? If that, would that meet the...
So if you're worried about disturbing existing vegetation to get the opacity up to a type A, the UDO now allows for a 6-foot-high fence to be placed within the buffer that takes the place of most of the shrub plantings that are required. So it gets that understory screening
I don't think that's where we're going.
No.
I think where we're trying to go, and I'm sorry if I hijacked this for you, but I'm really...
obviously not...
I'm really trying to bring this together. I think where we're trying to go is if the RCA is sufficiently wide, then no change is required. But if the buffer is narrow enough, then let's make it type A. That's the general concept, and what defines narrow, we can talk about, is it 10 feet or 20 feet or whatever?
We just need numbers. That's fine.
Okay. So do you want to say, what's a good number, 20 feet? If it's less than 20 feet, make it type A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that sound good? I heard a yes.
Yeah, the 20 foot.
All right, so I think where we got to that
was... already 20 feet though, right?
Yes, that's what I...
Well, if it's less than, if there's a part less than 20 feet, make it type A.
It's all gonna be 20 feet.
Is that...
Maybe 25 then.
You want to go 25?
Yeah.
So give them a choice? 25 foot, as is.
If the RCA is less than 25 feet.
Then make it type A?
Type A, yeah, there it is, yeah.
All right.
Just make it type A.
Okay.
On that parcel.
Yeah.
That'd be fine if you can offer that as a condition.
We'll offer that up as a condition.
All right, and I want to make sure you've got the wording for that, because I'd like to be really clear. This is one where I want to make sure...
20-foot type A on that one particular PIN number.
Do you know what the PIN number is?
Should be right there.
I know, it's one of those...
Mr. Jackson's got it on slide number 1.
I don't remember which one.
Can you give me the last two?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if I had, while we're working out that PIN number, so essentially we're looking for...
Yes.
Type A.
Type A along just that parcel.
Well, you wouldn't
correct.
need it along the other HOA part.
So, thank you, Mr. Jackson. So for PIN number identified 07338285661, a 20-foot type A buffer.
Minimum,
will be
yeah.
Provided.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's a new condition. Thank you for clarifying that. Councilman Gant?
I should have thought about it before I started.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
Sometimes it's better to get...
I think we ended up in a good place.
Yeah.
So, any follow-up thoughts since you had the floor?
I think although the woods will be less, it will be hard to see the change behind that. I think that's the appeal from that. That's it for that subject.
Are there any other comments from other council members?
Just two quick comments. I do appreciate the inclusion of master bedrooms on the first floor. That's definitely an issue, especially with an age-targeted community, looking at people that are older that may not want the stairs, or have to get up the stairs to get into their bedroom. I do appreciate the thought for that. And I do also appreciate the thought of the economy housing, trying to make things fit better and having a little bit more range of price in the community. But I also do agree with Councilwoman Dozier with, it's still, we still haven't met that point of affordability that we need for people who don't make even that medium income for Apex. Our teachers and our firefighters and our policemen would not be able to afford that. And that's what we're trying to get more diversity of, and trying to encourage with new development, is that diversity of housing from, having people who can afford housing at all levels. So, that's my comment.
All right.
I'd just briefly like to say I appreciate the consideration of 4 houses with solar photovoltaic systems. I take item number 5 on our legislative considerations, which is design minimizes environmental impact. I think that, well, you can never get to the very bottom of minimizing environmental impact, but you can take steps.
Sound like a space engineer or something.
I'm spaced out, yes. At any rate, I just appreciate that, especially the last climate change report has some dire predictions, and they're getting more secure in what their predictions are. So I do appreciate the step there. Hopefully more people than just 4 will join in and make Apex the cornerstone of renewable energy. And one other comment, though, I'll step onto the affordable housing. It's really difficult to do affordable housing on single lots. You almost have to go to townhomes, I think. And I recall, I think it's Dogwood Ridge up here. They have normal lot sizes, medium density, but then in the front of it they have townhomes, I believe they are, and fairly narrow. They don't have they don't have garages. It's designed for low-income housing. We had low-income housing at that time. Truly, we did. But the only way we're going to get back to it is to go to a little niche of townhomes or something like that within the subdivision. But this is too small to do that in. It has to be a larger subdivision. I'll let that go. Thank you for your time. I'm done.
No, that's good. And I appreciate you bringing that up because, you know, we learned a lot about, you know, some of the new ideas on the missing middle, you know, that concept, in terms of housing style and types. And there seems to be, it doesn't just have to be apartments or townhouse house. There's lots of other options in the middle that can help bring the individual unit cost down.
Condominiums are a nice way to go, but you can't get financing for the most part on that. So you do need that whole tier set.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I do think it's unfortunate that you know, there's 2 sort of sides within the same neighborhood about what happened and what didn't happen related to what we're looking at today. But I think that is unfortunately a private issue. I think it's unfortunate, and I hope that if this goes this evening, which I think it will, is that somehow gets better. I do think by looking at the packet and some of the ways that the applicant answered a lot of the questions, my hope, and you let me know if it doesn't happen, but my hope is that the applicant will be a good neighbor to Charleston Village and address the concerns that are environmental. Related to your paying a premium on your lots, we did get a lot of information via email, and here did not provide information as to any guarantee that the HOA made based on, or the seller, on your lots. And I don't even know if that's something that we could put in the mix of this, but anyway, I just think it's unfortunate with the different parties and within the same neighborhood having this issue. So I'm sorry that it's that way.
All right. Is there a motion to be made?
Motion to approve.
All right, so we have a motion to approve, and, so let me clarify, and I'll add some detail. The conditions, including the new ones that were on the sheet, which include the changes, we talked about 14, 15, and 16 there, and also the new condition recently discussed about the parcel that type A 20-foot minimum all around the adjacency to the Charleston Village neighborhood, roughly in those terms, right? Do you want to reword it? Or reword me?
I have, for PIN number 7338287, 561, a 20-foot type A buffer will be provided. And so just to clarify, when you said the entire parcel, we're not talking, and I just want to be clear, we're talking about perhaps maybe a 20-foot type A perimeter buffer?
Yes.
So perhaps that should be the additional
And
word so that...
We don't intend to mean the entire parcel.
And I actually only meant
the adjacent property
western and southern boundaries.
Okay.
Oh, because that triangle there
The triangle is
is already
HOA still.
RC, or is common property for the HOA?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good clarification.
So a 20-foot type A buffer will be provided to the...
South.
West and south. Mm-hmm.
So for the pin identified, a 20-foot type A buffer will be provided to the west and south of...
Okay. Great.
Minimum, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Anything thicker than
That
that would be welcomed, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right, so that's the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion.
I also appreciate putting the sidewalk outside the property. I know that, I tried to get a greenway path that was gonna go down there, and I appreciate your willingness to kind of explore that, and the staff, I spent many hours talking to everybody about that, and I like, at least the sidewalk is a nice, backup to get pedestrian connectivity, both for these neighbors to go into Charleston Village and the other way around. So I think it's gonna be nice to fill in the gaps of sidewalks.
Okay, not hearing any other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. One comment I'd like to make before everybody leaves, specifically, Mr. Corbin, if you don't mind if I single you out. We heard some things, and nobody wants to live in an HOA that's kind of split, and it's equally tough being on the board. Any of us who have served on a board knows that it's mostly a thankless job. But if I could make a friendly suggestion that might go a little ways towards healing, is to talk to the board about, once the sale comes through and revenue is available, see if there's any fair way that anybody who shares a parcel with the RCA can maybe participate in some of that directly. You know, consult your lawyer as needed, but I think that might go a little way towards helping. I think that may also be one of the things that if I had been someone who paid a little bit to live next to an RCA and then have the HOA sell it out from under our whole organization, I think that might go a little way towards healing. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so please consult one. Make sure you're within the law. All right. Thank you for a good conversation, everyone. Very thoughtful. At this time, we've concluded public hearing number 5, so we can move on to public hearing number 6. And this is public hearing and possible rezoning 18CZ 27. And Shelley Mayo is presenting.
Good evening. Hopefully this one's a little bit easier. This is for 540 Flex and Business Park. Most of you are probably familiar with the site. It's located here on the northwestern corner of Olive Chapel Road and 540. As you can see, the site is already under construction. The rezoning is for approximately 10.04 acres from Tech Flex conditional zoning to Tech Flex conditional zoning. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on July 30th, 2018. That neighborhood meeting report is attached to your staff report. The applicant is rezoning this primarily to add 3 additional uses. If you look at page 2 of your staff report, there's a list of all permitted uses in there, and 3 of them are in bold. Those are the 3 that we recently added. I think it was last month, it may have been the month before. And those are the 3 that the applicant would like to add to this property. If you go down just a little bit to the proposed conditions, the first 4 are identical with what was included in the previous rezoning for this property. So they are staying. The 5th one was added in response to the neighborhood meeting, and it's just restricting the size of each commissary use to no more than 5,000 square feet. Planning staff recommends approval of this rezoning with the addition of the following condition. There shall be either a 6-foot stockade fence or additional evergreen screening planted along the eastern property line between the thoroughfare buffer and the drainage easement. Now, if we just zoom in, if we look at this just a little bit, there is a drainage easement here. It stretches all the way up there. So basically, along this line here. In the previous rezoning, it was required that there be a 6-foot stockade fence all along this area. That's because these two parcels were residential at the time. Those parcels have been rezoned to commercial at this point and are being developed as an office park. However, staff still thinks that we should preserve that fence and or evergreen screening, mostly because if you're driving down Olive Chapel, the back of this building is what you would primarily see coming up. The buildings themselves look fine, except the backs are, as with any commercial building, not the most appealing part of it for you. And then there's also a section here which is the Techplex area that you can see down through this if you're driving down Olive Chapel. So staff would prefer to keep that additional screening to kind of screen off those mechanical equipment areas, things like that, that typically crop up at the back of buildings.
Can I ask you, you're suggesting either a fence or
evergreen screening?
Evergreen screening.
We've been advised by the applicant that portions of the fence have been unstable and have fallen over the course of time just because of the way it's sloped up there.
Just cheap construction.
Well, either way. So at planning board, it was discussed whether evergreen screening would maintain the same kind of look and everything and feel, and planning board agreed with staff that either evergreens or the existing fence, either one is fine. So planning board actually recommended approval with the condition proposed by staff.
Now, the evergreens would be opaque?
They would be.
I think that's a better choice.
I do too. When you're driving down that road, I know where you're talking about, and I agree, and some of it doesn't look the best when you're driving by it, and I would prefer to see trees rather than a fence.
Or evergreens like hollies that get up to 15 feet rather than a 6-foot fence, which doesn't screen nearly as nicely.
Exactly.
And just to clarify, the fence was included in the original zoning.
Right.
It was never proposed to be removed, as far as I can tell, right? Or was it?
The applicant originally asked to take that condition out because, as I said, part of the fence has been falling down.
Okay.
Some parts have stayed up and are fine, other parts have become a maintenance issue. So they originally wanted to take it out, but after some discussions with staff, we worked out that screening really would be in the best interest of everybody involved.
That's why it's not a proposed condition to take it out now.
Right.
What we're seeing. But to allow the flexibility for the evergreen.
Exactly. Because some of it's still structurally sound and still works just fine, and other parts keep having issues, so it'd probably be better to replace those with trees that'll grow nice and thick. Or, like you said, the large shrub types that get 10, 15 feet tall. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. You've already talked to Stuart. He's here to answer any additional questions about this one.
Questions for Ms. Mayo?
And maybe I missed it in the report. Was there a definition of these three uses? Commissary is cooking food outside of a restaurant, right?
There was not a definition in the staff report.
Okay. Can you define those?
I thought I printed those out. Let me see.
Or maybe give a typical example.
Aha, here they are. Automotive accessory sales and installation is the sale and installation of aftermarket products for which vehicle customization, for vehicle customization, including but not limited to things like window tinting, stereo systems, security systems, or vehicle wraps. So this wouldn't be any kind of oil change or tires or things like that. It might be, well, no, because it's in the definition, one of the supplemental standards is that there's no lift involved. So it's the kind of things that you can do without a vehicle lift. That's all indoors. So it's entirely enclosed in the building, and it's without any kind of a car lift. So they're fairly low-key things. Trailer hitches, those kinds of things.
Yeah, okay.
Commissary is a commercial kitchen where food service providers can go to store, cook, and prepare foods. These foods are not available for sale or consumption at the commissary. Typical use for commissary would be for commercial food truck, bakery, or caterer. So basically just a commercial prep kitchen, that's all they do there. And then manufacturing and processing minor is an establishment no greater than 10,000 square feet that's engaged in the manufacture predominantly from previously prepared materials of finished products or parts, including processing, fabrication, assembly, treatment, and packaging of such materials, and incidental storage and distribution of the products, but excluding any kind of heavy industrial processing. Typical uses would be food processing, wholesale bakeries, electronics assembly, pharmaceuticals, and printing and publishing. So, for example, if somebody wanted to do juicing, like create their own beverage kind of thing and bottle it, that would be one example of the type of thing that would happen there.
So these aren't necessarily really loud activities?
Not necessarily. There might be examples that could be, but we have a noise ordinance in the town, and that would be enforced.
Okay, yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, thanks, Shelley. Let's see, is the applicant here? Okay. You stuck around.
Stuart Jones, Jones & Knosson Engineering, here on behalf of JVI Development and Joseph Ione. Few key points, just to make sure we're all on the same page. As Shelley pointed out, the UDO was amended recently to add these 3 uses for TechFlex, and we're just trying to add those uses to the allowable use list for 540 Flex. The office condos, and I'm going to point to some of these areas, the office condos in the front are not part of the rezoning because these new uses are not applicable to the office uses. The front buildings along Olive Chapel, and I'll point those out, would be this building and then this building. The buildings that you can actually see from Olive Chapel. And these are also outside the security fence area, are for businesses that need storefront visibility and want to pay higher rates for that visibility. So the automotive accessory use would be the only one of the uses we're asking for that could potentially want space in those front buildings with the storefront, and they might use some of the parking at the front. So, you know, this is fully occupied with existing businesses, similar, there's printing companies, graphics companies, people like that. So if one of them left and an automotive accessory use might go in here, and they might need a couple of parking spaces. So the other 2 uses, the manufacturing and commissary would be in the back buildings. There's still more buildings to go in the back, but the commissary and the manufacturing would all be in the back behind the security fence, and they all have their own parking areas in the back. So they wouldn't tie up additional parking in the front. And we are in agreement with the modified fence condition that the planning board came up with. There were some comments at the planning board meeting. There were some concerns about the new uses being appropriate for office uses and parking and trash issues. I would like to say that the uses of medical office and clinic were added as new uses in 2014 after they were added as allowable uses in the UDO. The medical office uses are by far the largest generator of traffic and parking issues at 540 Flex. Most of these new uses will be in the back of the park where they have their own bathrooms, they have their own trash, they have their own parking, and they are away from the office condos. So we don't really see a conflict there with these uses. Let's see, we are consistent with the 2030 land use map. Planning staff is recommending approval. Planning board unanimously recommended approval. and I'll be glad to answer any questions about the uses, about where they might go.
Okay.
Go ahead. Were you gonna say?
I was gonna start this side today.
Okay, go that side, I'm sorry.
Thank you, then.
So what do you think about changing that to, a tree buffer along that eastern side?
No fence?
Tree no fence.
Tree, no fence.
Because of the visibility of the back of those buildings when you're coming down
I assume,
Chapel Road.
if I could, and I assume you mean whatever fence is there would not be non-compliant, but, okay.
Currently, remind me, there's not, it's a, was it a 6-foot fence along that side?
Yes. So the problem area is right along here. 540 Flex has a cut slope on our side, and then when the office park came in, they have a cut slope on their side, so now we've created this berm with a fence at the top of it, and there's really no structural help for that fence, so it keeps falling over in a wind. Once you get turning this corner, I don't think anybody's really worried about what's being screened, but that fence is doing fine, and the owner would really rather leave that portion, and he's fine with putting trees in this area.
Or how about this, maybe, no new fence, but anything additional that goes up there is trees around the side? You know, existing fence.
Can we codify that, Shelley?
Phrasing would have to be something like, as portions of the fence come down screening vegetation will be planted to replace it.
No new fence.
The only thing is, and Diane or Amanda are welcome to jump in if they disagree or if I'm just not thinking about it the right way.
I think it either needs to be one or the other, really. We can codify tomorrow, take pictures where the existing fence is, and that has to be replaced with fence when it falls down, or just make the whole thing vegetation and just they'll plant it before they get their CO. I mean, I don't think you can do, if in a month something falls down, we're gonna put vegetation. We don't have any way, and there's planting seasons as well that would be at issue. It's just, that would be very difficult.
You know, and it seems to me that the area where you really want to have the bushes and things is that one part that's right near Olive Chapel. The fence being on that other easterly property line does not really have any effect, I don't think, on Olive Chapel, and that's what we're trying to do, is make it decent for public.
On the major site plan, the building that has the condos in it is identified as Building C. We could amend the condition to say that the areas behind Building C shall be all evergreen screening, and that would give us something that we can refer back to and more easily enforce. And that would be essentially from this crook down. Be a little bit of this here too, but mostly from this crook down, which is the area that seems to be the most problematic, kind of both for screening and for the fence. Would that be agreeable?
Yeah, we're okay with that.
That sounds reasonable. If council is okay, we'll see if that can be written down. Okay. I think that hits the spirit of what we were looking. So from, the spirit is from Olive Chapel Road, green is preferable to brown.
Yeah.
In that sense.
From Olive Chapel along the backside of Building C would be evergreen screen.
Right.
And they get taller than 6 foot, typically.
A natural look, yeah.
Any other questions for me?
I do.
Oh.
You and I talked about adding 10% solar to the new building roofs. What was the decision on that? I didn't get it.
When I talked to Mr. Ione, he is still looking into solar, so a lot of the people have told him to call them back when he's done with the park, because they really wanted to incorporate the whole park. So what you see now is he's still working on this building. He's still got one big building back here to go, and they want to develop it all as one
Okay.
system kind of thing, so.
A minimum of 10% on the building roofs at the time of completion or within 6 months after the completion of the project. I want to get something permanent, or something in writing.
Right.
You know where I've been with this.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's not here, so I can't, I don't think I can agree to that condition. But I know that, I mean, he's gonna maintain ownership of this, and he's looking for ways to save money over the long term. But he's had two people come out, and then they both said, call us back when you get done with the project. Which I don't really
Well,
understand that, but...
Neither do I. I haven't heard of that approach in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. He's got a lot of rooftop to put it on.
Well, you've got a cooking possibility there that certainly sucks up a lot of electrical energy in all likelihood. You know, just, once again, the last climate change report was dismal and scary, and I'm pushing harder. And I'm just troubled that Mr. Ione is saying at the very end, which I don't understand. I really don't understand that. Because you go building by building, basically, and you set your infrastructure up so that you can do it. So, well, frankly, I have trouble agreeing with this without that.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Jones? All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. We'll go to public hearing, shall we? Thought I'd forget, didn't you? Public hearing, we'll open it, and we do have someone who has signed up. Sarah Stackloff? Huh? Stockliff. All right, I was nowhere near. Stockliff. All right, Stockliff. Sarah Stockliff coming up, and please state your name and address, and take it away.
My name is Sarah Stockliff, and I reside at 400 West North Street in Raleigh, and I am here as a designated speaker for my sister, Dr. Sabine Stockliff, and she is the owner and dentist at Prime Family Dental, one of the units in the office complex in 540 Flex. We are here to oppose rezoning application number 18CZ27, which proposes to add 3 uses to this office park: the commissary, as you all heard, commercial kitchen; 2, automotive accessory sales and installation; 3, manufacturing and processing. So, picture yourself going to the dentist. You have a toothache, you're not feeling great. Or maybe you're going for a surgery at an endodontist or another type of healthcare professional, maybe even a mental health care professional. That's a time in your life that you are feeling vulnerable, nervous, and you pull in to their office complex, which I will note has 1 entrance, and you see fumes from a commercial kitchen, or you might hear noises from a manufacturing plant, or you see a car with aftermarket parts added to it in the parking lot. What is your impression of your healthcare provider after you see that? So, we oppose this rezoning for 3 reasons. 1, it is not compatible with the character of the surrounding land use. 2, the substantial impact on traffic, parking, odors, noise has not been considered. 3, it puts the profits of one developer over the interests of the greater Apex community. So, number 1, it's not compatible with the character of the surrounding land use, which goes along with legislative consideration number 2. So, my sister is not the only healthcare professional in the office complex. There's an orthodontist, an endodontist, a psychiatry practice, an insurance agent, among other professionals. They invested in this property because it's an office complex. It is on a main road in Apex. They know that their businesses thrive on having an appearance of cleanliness, being pristine, which is not in line with adding a commercial kitchen, manufacturing plant, aftermarket car accessories. I think that goes without saying. So number 2, there will be a substantial impact on traffic, parking, and other items. As I mentioned, there's one entrance, so trucks with food deliveries might be coming in, any trucks with any chemicals or anything coming in will all come through the same entrance. So even though there's additional parking in the back for the potential commissary, the auto accessories will all be in the front, people will be dropping off cars, window tinting will be happening, aftermarket exhaust, which even if there's noise ordinances, is going to be adding to the noise pollution there. No other provisions have been made for the raw materials being transported, exhaust fumes, additional chemicals, wear and tear on the pavement. I know I'm running out of time. The last one, passing this rezoning applications means that you're putting the profits of one developer over the greater interests of the community. There are plenty of other uses that are in the current zoning of this that would allow him to develop it and sell it very easily in such a growing area. This is not really something that needs to be added. So thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stockliff.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I will close the public hearing, refer the matter back to council for discussion, and if I may, I'd actually like to start. Since there's a possibility I may vote, I feel like I should ask a question now instead of waiting until I need to vote. A question I have, and this is Shelley. The items that were being added, automotive accessory sales and installation, just to be clear, a window tinting, as was mentioned, would fall into that category?
Yes, sir.
As would an aftermarket exhaust?
Yes, sir.
As would a trailer hitch?
Yes, sir.
And
Actually, let me step back. I don't know exactly what is included with an installation of an aftermarket exhaust. If it's something that can be done entirely indoors and does not require a lift, then yes, it would be it's something that would be allowed. If it requires the use of a lift of any kind, then no.
It would require a lift. Well,
Okay, then
I'm
no.
not an expert, but I have personal, yeah. And on number 2, the commissary, and this is one I want to consider thoughtfully, because as we know, food trucks are very popular these days, to the point where food trucks, we want them to have the ability to cleanly prepare and prepare food that you can trust. You know, it wasn't that long ago that no one would dare buy food from a food truck because it was hard to know when they were preparing their food in a healthy and sanitary way. Commissaries help bring that about. Certainly your own personal processes help, but do you personally, as a planner, do you see a problem with a food truck coming in, preparing their food within their space, loading it into their truck and driving away? Do you see that in conflict with some of the other uses here?
Not particularly.
As a planner?
As a planner, no, not particularly. There would be very limited amount of traffic because it would primarily be done, most of the traffic would be very early in the morning or much later in the evening because they're typically out fairly either early in the morning, depending on what it is, or much later in the evening. So it wouldn't necessarily conflict with the traffic of the existing business, of the office-type businesses out there. As far as smells go, we do have a nuisance section in our ordinance which says that no use can create a nuisance for the surrounding neighbors. And we have had situations in the town before where we've had businesses that were approved that seemed at the time like they were not going to create a smell nuisance, and then it was discovered later on that they did. They were required to put in additional filtration systems and everything, and I can tell you from personal experience, you used to go down the street of the particular business I'm thinking of, and you could smell it everywhere, and it was very intense. I drove down there recently in the middle of a hot day, which is typically when those are the worst. Couldn't smell it after they fixed it.
And that's
So that's
and our
something that
current ordinances have
they
that.
would be required to do anything necessary
Okay.
to bring that under control.
And if they do not, and just to be clear for everyone in the room, we as a town would have the ability to, in effect, halt their operations until they make such improvements?
There are steps in the process, but my understanding is that would be one of the ultimate steps.
If they ultimately said, no, I'm not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it.
Then we could, in theory, shut them down.
Okay. All right. Thank you, that was very clear. And the last one, the third one here, the minor manufacturing and processing. Can you think of maybe some type of examples of what might fall into, because I understand manufacturing processing, but the word minor makes it sound to me like this would be non-obnoxious to neighbors.
Understandable. So we have a manufacturing and processing use in the UDO. This one is the primary difference between this one and that one is scale. There are a couple of other small differences, but primarily it's in terms of scale. Manufacturing and processing has a very similar definition based off of what I read out to y'all. It's just that the minor one is limited to no more than 10,000 square feet. Most of the time when you see manufacturing and processing, you're going to see a bigger business like a Tipper Tie, which is, if I remember correctly, something like an 80,000 square foot building the last time I looked at it. So it's going to be much bigger, have a much larger impact on surrounding traffic than something of this size. We recently, within the last year, had a request from a business to locate here that did refurbishing of larger batteries. And these larger batteries typically come built as conglomerations of smaller batteries. So what they would do was they would take the larger battery, take the case off, which does not involve exposing chemicals of any kind, and test each individual cell in there with a voltmeter, and say, okay, well, this one's bad, disconnect it, put it aside, and get another one that's identical to it, put it back together, put the case back on. That's not something that's currently allowed in TechFlex unless you have this particular thing. We went over all of the different options with them. We got all kinds of information from them about what would be incorporated in it, whether any of it was dangerous, all of that stuff. We were satisfied on all of those points, but we simply didn't have a use that was something permitted for it. On the other hand, we also have had people who, in other parts of town, have wanted to do a juice manufacturing type of thing, or kombucha manufacturing, something that is very low-key, and they wanted to bottle it and sell their own product in small local grocery stores. That is also considered manufacturing and processing, and unless you're willing to locate in one of the industrial parks, isn't something that we typically have had a use for. So it wasn't something that could go in a TechFlex situation, even though it might have been very small and may have taken up the same size as my office does. It still wasn't something that we could allow. So you've got the more technological sides that I could see people being a little more concerned about, although once we got through all the safety specs, we were fine with it. And then juice making, which is not really something I can see anybody being afraid of, unless you're allergic. But, so those are kind of the ranges of things that we're looking at. We added in here the possibility of pharmaceuticals as well, so it's possible there could be chemicals involved, but they would have to take all of the required precautions that are necessary for any type of chemical exposure or anything like that. The fire department is very good about enforcing all of those things. There are lots of us who remember what happened several years ago, and nobody wants a repeat of that. So we've been very, very strict about all of those kinds of enforcement. And when I mentioned it to the fire marshal, he didn't have a problem with it.
All right.
So,
thank you, Shelley. I appreciate that.
you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Can you give the context and maybe a little bit? I don't remember being on the council when those were added. Can you give a context of those three uses, how they were added, and like what the people bring them up to the previous councils or whoever, to you guys, about wanting those things in TechFlex?
The ones that I just mentioned, or these three particular?
The three new ones.
The three new ones were proposed. Amanda actually would have better memory of that since she's the one who handles all of our UDO amendments. But my understanding is they were proposed by an applicant, and
they were just added to the UDO this summer, or it was just like 3 months ago or so. And Stuart Jones was the applicant.
I think the request may have been with this particular property in mind.
Okay.
Any other, questions? All right, thank you, Shelley. At this time, I guess, if there's no other discussion, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a condition of the vegetation along that building C, I guess it is.
Okay, so you make a motion for approval?
Could we have one clarification? I heard several council members say trees, and the applicant keeps saying landscaping. Evergreen landscaping could be 2 feet tall. Is there a height that you all would like to specify at time of planting, or something?
That's a good thought.
Good thought, yeah.
Our standards are typically a minimum of 6 feet tall for screening or the height of whatever's being screened. We could do 6 feet, 8 feet's also something that we've done before. That's our standard for planting large type evergreen trees, is that they be at least 8 feet tall. Just informational.
Okay.
Go for
All right, so, with that input, with the condition, that we had discussed, right, vegetation, behind building C. Okay. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, with
the height?
With the height requirement of a minimum of 6 feet.
At planting?
At planting. They grow up. I notice sometimes when you require really big plants, there's a facility off of Laura Duncan where I drive by it and they're all dead because they're so difficult to plant in. So I think 6 feet is a good...
So the friendly amendment, 6 feet minimum at planting?
That's fine.
Okay.
Can we confirm that the applicant is agreeable to that change?
Yes, that's...
Okay.
Stuart, okay, thanks, he's nodding, yes. For the record, he nodded his head. All right, and you're okay with that then? So we got a motion and a second.
I didn't give a second.
You did not?
I did not.
Oh, are you thinking about it? You were asking for a clarification?
I was asking for a clarification.
Okay, so there's no second yet?
No.
All right. Is there a second? For approval? Huh, okay. Well, the motion fails to have a second. Is there an alternate motion?
Motion to deny?
We have a motion to deny, all right. Is there a second?
Can I suggest that this be continued if the...
Would you like to work with the applicant further? Is that what you're thinking?
That's my thought, for myself.
Mr. Jones, would you be willing to work with your client and Councilman Jensen to maybe help resolve some matters?
We're okay with a continuance.
Okay. So with that said, and I don't have a second so you withdraw your motion at this time? All right, is there a motion for continuance?
So moved.
All right, and...
Second.
Okay, and thank you. We got a second. Let me clarify a date.
November 20th?
November 20th? Okay, so without objection from the motion, a second, November 20th? Okay, so November 20th, the motion is a second to continue until November 20th to allow the applicant and Councilman Jensen and anyone else who wants to participate to resolve any matters. Any discussion on that motion to continue? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay, we will continue that matter until November 20th. And for clarity for the public hearing has been had, so that will be simply discussion and vote. Quick question before we move on to public hearing number 7. Does the council wish to have a brief recess or power through?
Yes, please.
All right, brief recess. We'll take a 5-minute recess and reconvene shortly.